Yo, what's up, everybody? I always look forward to these catch up sessions, and I'm certainly looking forward to having a conversation with you today. It has been another good week for us. My team, Amakosi Amahle, Kaiser Chiefs, won this weekend. That starts the week in a very positive note. I know some of you all might be saying, but Liverpool struggled. We are not talking about that. Not yet. Leave us to celebrate Amakosi in peace. And I know the United fans, you like to give us hate mail. Let's calm it down, please. You are still 10th in the league, and we are still playing Champions League. So, with that in mind, it's been a crazy couple of days here in Parliament, here in Mzansi, as we look at multiple things. But the one area that did slightly disturb me over this weekend was the reports of how an organization like AfriForum were successfully able to lobby the president in making some amendments in the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. Now, our laws are designed in such a way that they get the benefit of public participation, which means that as it's drafted, Parliament will take it to the people and the people can give their inputs. That includes everybody. AfriForum, any civil society organization, anyone, an expert in education, whoever it is, has the right to make their appeal there. All of that input then is brought into Parliament, and Parliament can make appropriate considerations as to whether it accepts those inputs, it rejects them, how does it incorporate it into the law, because ultimately the people shall govern. That's the thing, and therefore you want the voice of the people engaged. What though I found disturbing was that post all of that process, post all the many submissions that were put forward by many South Africans, the bill was then signed, was taken through Parliament, it was given to the president for signature, and at that point, the president then consulted with a private group of individuals. Now, could it be that anyone who has the right and has the cell phone number of the president can lobby the president privately? Surely I don't think that's consistent with the spirit of our lawmaking ability. And furthermore, it is dangerous because it ultimately can allow private individuals to have undue influence on the president. And furthermore, I think ultimately if the president has issues or has challenges in the bill, it can be sent back to Parliament. But access cannot be given through the executive or through the GNU directly into the person of the president, because the risk is far too big, given the fact that the last thing we need is to say to ourselves there are private interests who are able to influence post the parliamentary process. Citizens benefit from being able to make submissions to Parliament, and that must be upheld. But let alone the Bela bill, there are still multiple issues that are taking place in education. What seems to be an increasing concern, and all of us as citizens need to be worried about, is the fact that there are profound cuts coming forward. Now, cuts are a function of a low economic growth climate. South Africa has been growing at 1% for the last 10 years, which means we cannot build enough revenue to be able to fund our expenses. Secondly, South Africa's financing much of the debt. So much of the money that comes in, a significant proportion of it goes to debt servicing costs. Now, if the highest budget item is debt, it means that you often run out of money to do other things. So we have to grow. We have to be able to manage our debt so that we're not borrowing more, so that we can deploy resources to areas such as education. The net consequence of it is that actually there's looking like projectively in the medium term a stabilization, in some ways, and even a cut in education budgets, as some of the provinces have already started to warn, both Gauteng and the Western Cape. I am deeply concerned about this issue, and it's for this reason that we've got to do everything we can as Parliament to make sure this reality doesn't become an eventuality, that ultimately we can find resources where we can ensure that there's better funding towards education. It matters because if you underfund education, you do a couple of things that are devastating. The one, you increase teacher pupil ratio. Because when it's said and done, when schools get a limited budget, they can't hire more teachers and the kids still keep coming into the schools. And therefore, you increase the ratio and the crowding of classrooms. The second thing is you diminish the quality of education because we're not going to be able to, over the medium term, meet all the expenses that go into remuneration of teachers, etc. You sometimes end up with teachers who are underpaid and are remaining in the job because in some instances that's the only job they have. You want the best teachers because when you've got the best teachers, you can ensure that there's quality in education and you're not losing educators to other sectors where they end up doing other jobs as we see in other parts of the world. But you also, when you undercut funding, you end up with infrastructural issues because like you and me and everybody else, we know that when money is tight, you're not spending it on maintenance, which means school infrastructure begins to decay and you lose that infrastructure progressively. And so where there are provinces that still to this day need to be figuring out ways where they can finance for things like eradication of pit latrines, etc., I think you could end up with some real infrastructural deficits and issues that violate the dignity of all South Africans. So this is a crucial issue. Equally, that when we fight for more money, we must fight for better quality. We must ensure that kids are not being asked to pass a subject and be deemed proficient at 30%. That actually kids must be able to pass at a much higher level than that. My dream is that our kids can compete with anyone in the world. That we can show South Africa and we can show the African continent and the international community that young people who come out of South Africa are well educated, they are competing for jobs, and they can be able to do an extraordinary amount of work globally. They must be able to compete with anyone else because the competition for jobs in this country isn't one that is felt by our neighbors. It is one that we are competing with the international markets as we look at things. And therefore, it's important that we prioritize education as much as we've been able to prioritize things like safety, etc. This is a crucial dynamic. Let us fight hard for the quality of our education. And furthermore, I've been in our parliament and tomorrow I get to see Stats SA. Now you might say, what an arbitrary institution to come and see. Well, Stats SA sit at the center of all of government's planning. Quality data means quality planning, which can give us the results we need. Now, there have been a number of challenges about where, in fact, the quality of the data that Stats SA is producing, where, in fact, it is applicable when it comes to budget allocations and provinces, census, all of those things. So now we're going to be engaging Stats SA. I want to have a deep conversation with them so that we make sure the integrity of that data is correct. What we cannot afford to do is for the data that the government uses to be manipulated for political means. On another day, someone can wake up and say, well, I think unemployment is at 5%. Who are you to debate that issue? You can find another expert elsewhere or whatever. But Stats SA are an important, credible institution that must maintain its integrity so that our planning, our consistency of data produces the sort of budget allocation that we need that maintains that integrity. And then on another more crucial issue, Eskom has gone out and asked for an increase in the cost of electricity. Numbers of between 40% indicate the fact that things are about to get super expensive. Another great concern is the fact that an increase in the cost of electricity adds profound inflationary pressure. It means that when you bought electricity for 100 rands, that electricity will now last you 3/4 of the time rather than the actual 100% that it was meant to last you as a start. And secondly, which means as you keep buying more, the cost of goods in production and manufacturing keeps going up as electricity is an input cost, which will put more pressure on South Africans who are poor. I am in Parliament to fight against this issue, and certainly I think that there are other models that are on the table. The minister has already said that we're going to have to get used to electricity costs going up. I don't think we need to. And I think that even as other renewables are coming on board, there is a way of thinking about how we make sure this cost remains as low as possible. Because as things stand at the moment, what South Africa desperately needs is stable energy energy that citizens can be able to rely on for their own productive means. But ultimately, it's got to be energy that's not expensive. Because if we don't, we will miss some of our developmental objectives. And it will mean that we'll have to lay off South Africans who from work, and those who are seeking work may not be able to find work. So let's fight. Let's oppose the tariff. Let's do everything we can to protect the most vulnerable in society and ensure that we have an economy that is reliant on energy to deliver for the future. Let me, as I close, this is a moment in our nation. I've been thinking long and hard about where our country's politics sit. Sometimes it's easy to dismiss the aching question of our country. How do we make sure those who are excluded are included? Now, political parties will come. At first, they begin by agitators who say they are the only ones who can liberate the excluded, of which many of those are Black South Africans, who, as a function of our history and many others, have been left on the periphery of our economy. This is not to say it's a cancellation against white people. It's about ensuring that we prosper together, right? But if we don't have shared prosperity, we end up with many South Africans feeling like they are spectators to wealth, which its own consequences taken on by parties like MK and many others who take that cause forward and speak about it. Now, some of the actors within MK were themselves contributors of the poverty. But that they are saying it and talking about it, and parties that must be leading on that score don't often talk about it, means that you allow a populist voice that at first seems to be seen as progressive and taking over the plight of many South Africans who are excluded, will soon become a liberation movement where people feel like they need to be liberated. And I can assure you, when that happens, it will be a tidal wave of populism which we cannot control. If we do not manage our economic prospects at the moment, we will live in a country where the poor will take on the wealthy, and that instability cannot be one we can afford as a nation. So, my fellow South Africans, when we look at such, it's important that we realign our politics, but not only the realignment that is just a grouping of the elites versus anyone else, but that in fact we begin to speak to the issues that South Africans are battling with, that we begin to engage South Africans who are excluded. It's why I wake up every day and think about Build One South Africa, because if you don't achieve that, the stability of the country is at risk. You end up with more and more people feeling like they're left out, and you build multiple South Africas, whether it be it in education, whether it be it in healthcare, whether it be it in security. We have to make sure that the dream is all South Africans come together, but they experience a quality of service. Whether you live in Sandton or Alex, the police work for you, the healthcare system works, that the caliber of housing that we build is of such a standard that citizens really can enjoy the benefits of freedom. So this is a journey that we're undertaking. Parliament this week will rise, and so I'll be back in community seeing people door to door. I'm excited about the opportunities we're being presented with. Yesterday, I had a powerful meeting with unemployed informal traders who are working together to be able to create wealth for themselves as entrepreneurs. Let's get behind this group of South Africans. I'm also enjoying reading. I'm reading Isabel Wilkinson's The Warmth of Other Suns. Beautiful book about migrant work, and I'm reading multiple books at this point in time, but really the bulk of my work has been given into studying. And then I am off to be playing more sport to find out how we can keep fit as a country and ensure that all of us live a South Africa that is healthy, that is prosperous. I say this to you, I love you all, and I'm grateful to be able to work alongside with you to build a nation that is truly prosperous. Much love, Shak.